But it's also important to try and get the flavor for what kind of game setting it is and kind of rules set. Now, most of the maps I've done have been for D&D or similar game systems, or it's forks, so to speak. But it's really important. It's like, I can imagine if I go to sci-fi or do something for cyberpunk or steampunk, then all of a sudden you need to tweak the settings and steampunk symbols and what fonts you use and stuff like that is also really important. Symbols.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's so many of these kind of little nuances, but that's what I'm getting paid to think about that, to spend 3 hours just testing which font works the best and then send it out, because that's what they pay me to do these thinking and think a lot about stuff that the one writing the stories or the crunch or the monster stats should not have to worry about this at all.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when this probably belonged more properly back in the previous segment we were talking about virtual, but when you create a map, or anybody creates a map, I guess anybody can answer this question.
Yeah.
Is everything created on its own layer? Like if you're going to draw a little fire pit there on your map or whatever, do you create all that separately with the knowledge in mind that eventually it will be exported as all separate pieces?
Oh yeah. You work in when I do my big setting maps, then I first do in 3D, because I create a virtual 3D terrain, meaning I create a real 3D terrain that you can look at from any angle. When I do the new setting maps, the current existing Greyhawk map is done with early version, 20-year-old tools that they are ancient, the Stone Age. But Midgard maps and Southlands and so on, they are done using way better maps these days. And there you have a perfect example of that's I did for Gryffindor games. And these are you don't necessarily have to look at them from top down. So the first is 3D programming, and then it's 3D rendering, and then you render things like textures and whatever, and then you take them into Photoshop and you do a lot of Photoshop editing and you work on the textures and blending and stuff. And then you have sometimes 50 layers or 100 layers. And
easily.
And I can have files that are 40 to 50 gigabyte in size when I'm working, and then you merge them down and flatten them, take them into Illustrator, and then I put the roads and the labels and the borders and all that stuff in there, and then export out the final map. Those are the three kind of main steps. So, and I kind of like it because the first one is very technical. It's visual programming. The second one is very artistic. You sit there and paint and paint and paint. And then the third part, you sit and do texting, and it's kind of tweaking and crafting and stuff like that. Feels more like it. And then you're done, so to speak. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think I don't do the 3D step, but that sounds really similar to how I do it. I do the illustration first, so I know where all the lines are. Then I underpaint on all that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, you often do like a sketching in Illustrator real quick, just to where the coastline should be or something like that. And then you put it in there, so you have a kind of a sketchy map to work from. Yep.
So how far do you, just a technical question, how far do you take it before you show it that first time?
Usually the first thing I do is that I get the topography right, because I want to know where the mountain ranges are, where the major rivers are, where the coastlines are. That's the thing. So and that is often tricky for a lot of my customers, the clients that I work for, is that for them, they think fantasy. They want to see a Tolkien map and they want to see these drawings. So when I show them something that looks very scientific, they kind of go back and I say, well, where's the jungle? Trees are no, I just want to know the topography. I want to know where it's at highest, the Himalayas, where the big flat lowlands and stuff like that. So and the characteristics that way. And then we go into texturing, and then we put the trees on there and the forest and all that. So I want to have the topography done first. And that's the wonderful thing, that now I work for Kobo Press. We've done 3 big projects. So now it's kind of, now they got it. So Wolfgang and Ben and Brian and the other ones, the Kobolds, they know now how my process works. So when I send it to them, they know what to expect, and they can simply say, no, these mountains should go here instead, and so on. So now it's much more quicker, which means that we can add way more detail and get much further. So it's kind of, but it's a little bit of pain, because I speak visual and think visual terrain wise. But on the other hand, that's why they hire me, because they don't want to think about this. So it's like, yeah. So that's why politicians have speechwriters, because they don't want to sit and figure out and do all the research and whatever. So it's part of it. You hire experts to do things you can't do yourself.
Pretty much.
Right, for sure. So one of the that's a good segue, because one of the subjects that we like to discuss on the show is making, I guess, the non-professional, the game master's life easier.
Yeah.
And so that's all that is. Really highlights what it takes to be a professional cartographer, and a lot of times, in particular, the game master who's just sitting at their house and they need to make a map on the fly, or need to make a map for their next session or whatever, they don't have an Adobe Photoshop license or a subscription. They don't have access to all the tools. They certainly don't have any training. So there's a lot of tools out there. I'm getting to a point here. So there's a lot of tools. There are a lot of tools out there that make it easier for the game master to create maps. And what are your, just in generally speaking, what are your thoughts on?
There are so many awesome tools.
Specific ones, yeah.
Yeah, and there's more and more coming. If you want to do, I just got a license today for Dungeon Fog. It's an Austrian company, and keep looking at them for like the past year or so. I wasn't in on the Kickstarter, but they started to come on my radar like a year ago or something. And I've seen them getting better and better. And I tried out the free version. And I realized it's awesome. Yeah.
It is.
So that was the thing. And I've used many others, like Otherworld Mapper. It's been a nifty little tool that I used for some stuff. And I'm still searching for the best one to present my maps in, but it will come. And then you have Incarnate is another one that is really cool. It's a browser based, I think, still that you use assets that are in there to do super cool maps that look professional. The only problem is that they have a certain look. And then you have the fantasy the campaign cartographer from Pro Fantasy and the dungeon cartographer and stuff. They are CAD based, so they are a little bit, you need to like the CAD way of doing things. If you're an AutoCAD person and you like to click once and then you click the right mouse button and you hold down shift and then you move a bit and then it looks fantastic. So once you get over the hurdle, they are not artistic. You don't sit and paint like you do in Photoshop. But once you got over the hurdle of learning the basic CAD functions in it, you can do fantastic looking maps in Pro Fantasy's tools. So there's a whole bunch of them that way. And there now, if one of the interesting pro tips, if you want to have a satellite looking map like I do, top down, you go into Google Earth and you simply, or Google Earth in a browser, and you disable all the roads and all the names and all the layers. You just get the photography. Zoom around the world until you find something that looks cool. If you want desert, zoom into the Sahara, so Mongolian desert, or out in Nevada, Arizona somewhere. Find a location that looks cool, take a screenshot, and voila, there you have your little area in your campground where you can run your encounter, and it can look fantastic. And then you take that into to GIMP or something tool, or into Dungeon Fog or something, and simply put your asset on top of it, or straight into Fantasy Grounds. There you have perfect. You can, and no one can say that they don't look good, because they look realistic. They look super realistic.
This is realistic.
Yeah, I wish I could do that, but I can't steal from Google and use it. So I have to create every pixel by myself, and I do professionally. But for my own games, I could wholesale just steal some desert here or some jungle or whatever it is, and just go straight in.
We're not stealing.
Yeah.
We're borrowing.
Exactly. Yeah, borrowing. Yeah.
Great artists borrow. You know.
Yep. And that doesn't cost a penny. It's for nothing. It doesn't cost a penny, and you have the whole world to play from, and the moon and Mars and probably a couple of other planets soon. So
I use that technique. That's why I don't actually render things out 3D, because I do exactly what you're talking about, which explains why, like 3 years ago, every game I ran that year took place in like a loch in Scotland, because there were so many cool places. I'd look at one and be like, ooh, there's an even cooler one over there. And I just scooted my way all around the Lachlan. So
and even in GIMP, or even if you don't use Photoshop and use GIMP, you can kind of put them together and then paint over the ugly bits, and you can kind of build your world bit by bit, and you can make a fantastic looking world that way. That it's simply superb. For your own use, it could be as good as any professional map, if not even better.
Yeah, Really, that's certainly one that I'm gonna take back for myself. That's great.
And the beauty part too is you can scoot down and look at it.
Exactly. You can even get isometric views from the side. Yep. And take them in Photoshop or GIMP if you don't want to pay any money. You use an open source GIMP. It's a little bit clunkier in the UI, but it works. It has basically all the function, and you tweak it a little bit. You can put clouds, and then you can work miracles that way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we were talking about Dungeon Fog as one of the examples. I've got a couple that I was going to go over, but Dungeon Fog specifically, you just got this subscription. I bought a subscription. It's only been about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's super impressed. I also was not involved in their Kickstarter, but when I first saw it, it certainly left kind of a lot to be desired.
Yep.
In the very beginning, but just like any software package does, in particular Fantasy Grounds. But
one moment, folks, please. Let's find his video picture. He's going black.
All right. That was more of a dig at Jimmy than actual Fantasy Grounds. I really do like Fantasy Grounds. Anyway, Dungeon Fog. Now it is amazing. So I bought 2-minute tabletop. 2-minute tabletop maps. If you're not familiar with him, he's on Facebook. A guy named Ross down in Australia. He creates not only maps for GMs to use generically, but also the fiddly bits, if you will. So the tokens that you can drop on a map.
Assets.
Yep.
Assets, And so they've now, at least since I used it last time, you can incorporate or import all those into Dungeon Fog. And it is amazing tool. It really is great. And when they get this Project Dios off the ground, when they're cooperating,
there will be cities and whole large area maps, and then tie it in with World Anvil, so you can put all the details in there too. Wow, that's only the virtual tabletop where you actually run the game and do the rolling the die and level up your characters. But it's that close. That's the only thing they're missing. So there are more and more companies moving. They only miss one bit, and they have all the other bits, so to speak. So it will be interesting to see who can kind of tie up the whole package first. So
and I think I was just going to say, I think that we were just joking about this the other day, and I don't want to reveal any of World Anvil's secrets or anything like that, or feel like I am, but it just seems kind of like they've gone about it from the back door, if you will. So they created this awesome world building tool where you can track all of your stuff then going on in your campaign. And now they're incorporating maps. And if you're not familiar with World Anvil, which happens to be the next app that I wanted to talk about with making DM's lives easier, you can track all that stuff. You can also now put dice rolls in there. So you have the Roll20s and the Fantasy Grounds of the world. But if you're a DM out there that's just using Zoom, you don't need any of this. You can put your map in World Anvil. You can include the dice roll code to roll the dice and click that when you're ready to do it. And I mean, it's almost there, and it kind of seems like they were kind of sneaky about it and went in the back door on the virtual tabletop.
And Dungeon Fog is, when they gang up together, Dungeon Fog already have the lighting effects, and they have the you move the tokens around. So then there's a lot of overlap between the tools, and eventually there will be one tool, but probably not for all the games, but there will be one tool. If you play D&D 5th, there will probably be a package that is perfect for you, and if you play Pathfinder, it might be another one, and so on. So, but it.
What, Matt, wasn't there also Foundry? Wasn't that the other piece that Dungeon Fog them were partnering with that was going to run competition to Roll20 in Fantasy Grounds? Wasn't that what it was called? Foundry, I believe?
Yeah.
I know there's another piece out there, that puzzle that you're
right.
talking about. So it's there.
And there's another German company coming out with another campaign management tool that's called Yarps that is coming soon. And they also seem to be a little bit tied in and have some sort of cooperation with Dungeon Fog. So I don't know what's happening here, but there is the market 5 years ago when I bought Realmworks, a tool that I've still used and love, but now, and 5 years ago there were no competition basically, but now there's plenty. So the market is really and overall as an end user it's kind of fantastic. There will be more tools, better tools, and prices can be kind of kept low that way. So yeah.
I think World Ammo is probably pretty smart when they thought of what to build first. You know, if you're going to build a foundational tool, then you make it easy for other vendors to come in and build on top. And who knows, you know, you see other people building stuff, you make good business decisions, and you end up being in the right place at the right time.
And they also done both Dungeon Fog and World Anvil are browser-based tools, which are kind of good because you can run it on almost any platform that has a full-featured browser, and it's also very easy to reskin things, to install new versions, and to network. Comes kind of for free. The drawback is that they're a little bit less powerful and a little bit more clunky than if you run in a native application, and you also have to have access to the internet, otherwise you're screwed, you can't use them.
Sure.
So there's drawbacks, but it seems to go more and more towards online tools, and eventually I think that's where we will head.
Cloud-based.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing too there'll be offline sync as a future feature. You know, you'll have the capability to, I'm going camping, I don't have internet, but I still want to run my game.
Yep.
It is funny you mentioned that, because I was camping last night and I was thinking that exact thing. Is why, or 2 nights ago, why no internet connection, didn't even have a cell phone, and I couldn't do anything with my maps because I've been doing a lot of stuff in Dungeon Fog, as I mentioned. So yeah, it's that's certainly a feature that could be useful. And you mentioned campaign cartographer and dungeon cartographer. Man, if hats off to you if you're able to figure that out, because that was worse, not worse in the bad sense, but for me it was more difficult to learn than like Photoshop.
It's for some people they love the CAD, and for me the same thing. It's not. I struggled, and I've done some maps in campaign cartographer and stuff, but I never. They can look fantastic, but I never got over the clunky way of doing it. It's kind of backwards for me. Yep,
yeah, for sure.
It took me forever just to figure out how to. I tend to draw first, like physically draw. And I'll draw really complex levels of stuff, and then how to bring that in and be able to use it in Photoshop was challenging for me at first, because I had so much subtlety already established that I felt I couldn't paint over it correctly. And but eventually I just learned how to. I bought a tablet and I learned how to draw with a tablet as well as I could draw with a pencil.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I think the other one that we talked about real quick was Incarnate. And Incarnate's a great tool I've found. And you did mention, and I totally agree with you, is that if you see an Incarnate map, you're definitely going to recognize that as an Incarnate map. There's not a lot of versatility there as far as being able to choose different icons. The look is definitely Incarnate. So if you see that, I guess I bought the professional or the commercial one, for example, and anybody who sees that in print is going to know that it's an Incarnate one. But super quick, very nice, and
over time that might change, because as soon as if they can make more assets that look different, then you can build. They can build many different styles rather than just one. Fantasy Grounds or campaign cartographer was that way. You only looked one way to begin with. Now you have many different. You can have hundreds of different styles. You can even make Mike's sleigh maps in it that looks very the real thing, because it's his assets in there. So I think that way, and that's simply something I have to realize, that in 10 years, what I do now for a living, anyone can do. So I have to up my game and learn new tools all along, so to speak.
Maybe, but I would say, and not to blow smoke, but I'm just saying, as an artist as well, I feel like there still is the artistic intention and the artistic ability. Like, it's like having taste. So you can make a beautiful thing with a tool, but there's still something, like if I want a beautiful map, I first of all don't want it to be replicable by anybody else really easily. You know, especially if it's for a product. And then second of all, I want the interaction of the artist with my idea. I don't want somebody just dragging color forms around on a background. You know, that's great for quick stuff, but I mean, if it was for publication or for something that was very serious,
then it's different. But and also I think that the role of professionals in a lot of stuff like this will probably change. You will be role model as much as a producer, so to speak.
Correct.
You will inspire others on how to use the tools and how to do it, and also how to produce assets for tools will probably probably be a big part of my job in the future.
Yeah, I think
Right,
that's very likely.
I was just going to say, I was going to pile onto that and say, yeah, I think just as you mentioned before, where books are going to be the tabletop, the centerpiece for the coffee table, and hey, look at my collection. I think the same thing's going to be true for the maps that are in those. You're still forever going to have the guy or gal that's going to be able to hand draw a map, and that's going to be far preferred for a professional publication for a long time to come.
Yeah.
I don't see the incarnates, and nothing against the apps, because I use the heck out of them, because I don't have an artistic bone in my body.
That's not true.
But that will never replace hand drawn stuff like you're doing, for sure.
Yeah, I think it also just comes down to the idea that, like, right now, every GM makes their own maps.
But that is starting to disappear, because there's, in the beginning, when I started gaming, that was the only option. There were hardly any adventures out there. So you had to invent your own adventures. You have to write your own campaigns. So, and then Greyhawk came around, and I used the base of it, and I just invented my own stuff in there, so to speak. So you use it as a canvas. But today, there's a lot of gaming groups and DMs who simply run adventure paths. And nowadays, I think that could be a very viable, depending on what game. But if you run Pathfinder, for instance, that come out like quarterly or something, and it's a big book, and it comes with all the material you want, and it's awesome, and you can tweak it as much or as little as you want and run awesome. I've been player a couple of campaigns, and it's been awesome. So there is now so many cool different ways to game that didn't use the homebrew was the only option 25 years ago. But now there is one of the cool options. But you can simply take the canned adventure and run it as intended. And some players seem to prefer it too, because for them it's like, oh, if you play a game, then have you run that game? Then you run that module, and you run that module, and it's more like a hit list. Like I played this much because I played all these modules. So I'm
right.
And they look at it as a game that way, and that's for me, it's a perfect viable way of playing role-playing games.